in terms of human resources, in that Mamba, Liverpool and myself are two program officers who have spent considerable amount of time in organizing and coordinating this workshop. And the CCC has contributed financially as well. Then there is the government of Dominica, which has contributed, quite a lot in terms of the material which was provided for the repairs at the Cynical School, and in terms of providing us with the opportunity to camp at the school itself. It's also important that we recognize that the Caribbean participants who have come to this camp and those who come from outside of the Caribbean territory, that we hope that they themselves will also learn and benefit from the experience of interacting with the Carib people. So it could lead towards a better understanding of who the Caribs are, and why we have to really appreciate them for what they are and who they are.
For MTV News, I am Thalia Remy.
Experts in the medical field say that maybe more than 10% of Dominicans suffer from some form of cancer. Dr. George Daniel says that Dominicans should make it their business to learn more about this killer disease.
There is an increased incidence of cancer in Dominica and the Caribbean, and that is very prevalent among blacks, both in the United States and elsewhere. As a result, I think it is important that we, especially those in the medical field, know as much as they can about the management of cancer. I mean, cancer takes on different phases. We've got solid tumors and we've got cancers of the blood.
In response to the urgent need for more information about cancer, Dr. Daniel has invited a team of experts in the field of oncology, that's the study of cancer, to speak to the public. Dr. Daniel stresses that this seminar, which will be held on Saturday at the Fort Young Hotel, is not just for people in the medical field.
An opportunity like this is open not only to the doctor, but also to the patient. I think it's an opportunity for the patients to themselves find out what's out there, what the modern treatment of some of the problems that they may have been experiencing over the past few years or so, because many patients have the problem for several years before, they come to a final stage in this, incident. And I think that it's an opportunity for those patients to come out and learn more about the medical problem.
Free consultations will be available to the public. And to move on from one disease to the cause of another disease, the battle against drugs continues. The journey to Mont Bruce to witness the destruction of confiscated illegal drugs seem frequent these days. Sergeant Casimir Joseph was in charge of this afternoon's mission.
Just put up in flames a quantity of about 700 plants of marijuana, about 1.5 pounds of cocaine, and about 5 pounds of cured marijuana. The 700 plants were seizures by the drug squad in recent weeks. The cocaine and cured marijuana were exhibits at the High Court for the Court of Appeal that has just been over, and were handed over by me to the registrar, from the registrar to me, for destruction today.
The unfortunate and untimely death of a little girl has brought sorrow to one family in Atkinson. Celia Remy has the details.
Last Sunday afternoon, a tragic accident happened here in Atkinson. 13-month-old Cathy Ann Grano walked out of her aunt's house and met her death.
I was in the house. The mother left the child with the bigger sister and me and my another daughter. All of her four of us was inside. This daughter of mine, Cara, she went to bathe by the river. As she came from the river, she went in the room. She heard the transport blew. So she rushed, hurriedly put her clothes on, and then she ran outside. Now in running outside to ask the uncle, what is his problem? So she left the bedroom door open and then the front door open. So the child must have been, because I didn't see the child when she came out. The child must have been, came after her. And nobody didn't observe.
I was in the shed. I was showing some copper bags. Then I had a little girl with me, my second daughter with me, this one. She was with me. So we heard her screaming coming up the road. Somebody screaming. So she got out of the shed and she ran to the road. And she run back inside and she tell me, Mommy, Mommy, Terrian shouting, Terrian crying, Mommy, Catty die, Catty die. So I just run. I just leave everything and I run. I just don't know if I fly, but I just know I reach down. We went into the casualty when we reached there. And when we reached at the hospital, the nurses came to meet us. Took the baby into the casualty. They tried their best. They really did. They really did.
It is unclear as to what exactly happened. Whether Catty Ann was hit by the back of the pickup or whether she fell, it is a harsh blow to all of her family.
I tried to give her drips. She couldn't take it. She just couldn't take anything again. So I was watching all the time. Then I saw them stop. They turned back and they watched me. And they watched the child and they whisper something. So I stand up and I say, she's dead, not true. She's dead.
This is the kind of thing that could have happened to anyone. It's just unfortunate that it had to have happened here.
An inquest is scheduled for Thursday, and Catty Ann will be buried on Friday, 3 p.m. in Salibia. And still in the field, Ms. Remy tells us about how an almost fatal injury has a young woman pleading with Dominicans for assistance, but the outcome is not exactly what she expects.
7-year-old Beverly James of Cassibruce almost lost her sight last April. Victim of a vicious attack, she is now virtually housebound.
My sight is not bright. I cannot identify people. I can't make out things as such. Well, my life, I just there. I can't do anything. I can't work. I can't do anything. My life is get bad. My life is worse.
The surgery which she needs is unavailable in Dominica. Her only hope is sponsorship. She has approached the St. Thomas-based group, Wasin Dominic.
There's a group in Grand Midi called Wasin Dominic, and I wrote to that group for some financial to help and so to say I can get some surgery on the eyes. And they're willing to help me because they was in Dominica not too long last week. And I wrote them a letter a month back and they got that letter and they came down to Dominica. So I called them and they told me to come up to Grand Bay. Then I talked to all the group members and they did agree to help me to do something. But they went over again and they tell me they will check me and know what is taking place.
Beverly was attacked by her boyfriend's jealous lover, and she believes this has affected the way people have responded to her situation.
As if there's nobody willing to help, you know? Right. So I don't bother keep on going around on them and ask them for no financial.
Do you think it was because of how it happened?
Yes, because of how it happens, you know.
The summer volleyball clinic came to an end today. At the Windsor Park this morning, 15 eager youngsters gathered to receive their certificates and a few words of encouragement.
And we all know that volleyball is a very complicated game, but I'm very much pleased and impressed with the effort and interest that you have put into it. I do hope that this is not the end of it all, but by returning to your respective schools in September, that the interest and effort may be maintained in developing and strengthening volleyball teams at your school.
We also see these programs as giving the children an opportunity not only to learn different sporting skills, but to engage in what we consider to be meaningful activity during the summer vacation, rather than sitting at home watching television all day long. And so we hope that as this develops, that more children will participate and parents will begin to recognize that there are activities into which they can register their children during the summer vacation. So we thank you very, very much for turning up, and we thank your parents for allowing you to participate in this program, and we hope that next year there will be greater things.
Stay with us. We'll bring you the news from the region.
I want to rinse you.
When you consider the demand for places in the secondary schools, and you have as many as 116 children or more repeating first form, which really means that one is depriving 116 or more children of places at a secondary level. So
Mrs. Sorrento says that doubling students is costly and becomes a burden on the educational system. He points out that if students were not repeating forms, then there would be more places for potential secondary school students.
We could have probably had many more children from the common entrance exam this year, maybe 120, 150 children, additional children who could have been taken into secondary schools. And this is an issue that we are examining with a view to reducing that rate.
The Ministry of Education is currently reorganizing the educational system. Heavy torrents of rain paused for a moment this morning, allowing DOWASCO workers to demonstrate the process of their sewage study and cleaning project. Patrick Martin, project director, says the Rosa sewers are about 100 years old and have not been regularly inspected.
Well, this is the first time that we have ever had the equipment on island to enable us to do a comprehensive inspection of the sewers. As you know, what we have been doing is using the rodding. We get an idea as to the condition of the sewers, and for that given condition, we do flow measurements as well, and we also get an idea as to the operations of the sewers. For the given sizes, what's the performance of those sewers. And all of this information is going to help us in our designs for new sewers.
DOWASCO called on Canadian consultants to assist with the project. The Canadian International Development Agency donated the sewer cleaning and inspection equipment. A high-velocity jet cleaner pushes pressurized water through the sewer pipes. The high-pressure water cleans out the pipes, flushing out the debris to the inlet. The vacuum cleaner at the manhole then sucks up the grit, grease, and other debris. A closed-circuit television camera is passed through the cleaned-out sewer pipe for inspection. Rene Bordage explains further.
They put the nozzle through the line again, but they attach a cord to it, so that you bring the cord to the upstream manhole. They then attach it to a steel cable and pull back the steel cable into the line. So you're now set up with a steel wire from upstream to downstream manhole. They then install the winch at both ends, put in these cable guides, as you can see on the sides here, and then they're ready to put the camera in the line. Then the operator that's on the downstream winch has a walkie-talkie, and he communicates with the operator inside the truck that's watching the TV, the monitor, watching the camera on the monitor, so that the operator inside the truck can then give directions to the fellow on the winch as to when to move, when to pause, start and go, and so on.
This allows the engineer to collect other pertinent information, such as the number of manholes, date inspected, and person inspecting. It is also important to measure the distance the camera has traveled in order to pinpoint specific problem spots and make recommendations for problem solving. The project is expected to be ongoing over the next few years. A complaint sparked a visit to the Emerald Pool today for National Development Corporation workers.
We've come to the Emerald Pool today after doing Trafalgar Falls last week, because we've also received a complaint that at the Emerald Pool there are some difficulties affecting vending, that there is a little, shall we say, stiff competition. That is, people in seeking to ply their trade competing vigorously with one another to the extent where that type of competition may make the customer, that is the visitor now, a little uneasy in that he is being pressed to buy.
Charles Savre suggests that the zeal was not in evidence because of today's bad weather.
We haven't seen any of that today. Today is very rainy, it's wet, and I presume that vendors are staying very close to their stalls and are not venturing away from their stalls towards the buses that bring the visitors in an effort to persuade them to buy from them. So that today all appears to be quiet, all appears to be very orderly, but that is not to say that that is how it always is.
Mr. Savre emphasized that good conduct is essential if vendors are to make money.
If the visitors are dissatisfied, if the visitors are annoyed, if they are concerned that they are being in any way made uncomfortable, then they will be reluctant to visit those sites where they are uncomfortable. So if we always have good reports from the visitors who come to Dominica, then Dominica will continue to be included in the itinerary of the cruise ships. If, on the other hand, we have bad reports, then people will want to think again as to whether they should continue to include Dominica in the itinerary.
The NDC General Manager suggested some measures that may be taken to solve the problem.
That people are anxious to sell. As I said, we haven't seen it here today. So one of the things that we may very well want to do, we may want to franchise out the whole question of vending. We may want to allocate particular spots where people can establish themselves and require them to remain there. Let the visitor approach you rather than you approaching the visitor, particularly many of you approaching the visitor at the same time.
Still on the issue of tourists, Dominica's reputation rests upon the treatment visitors receive here.
It needs to be emphasized that the people of Dominica, all the people of Dominica, must understand that any complaints which we have, that somebody's purse has been stolen, somebody has been threatened, somebody has been approached in an aggressive manner, any such incident impacts negatively on the reputation of Dominica.
According to Mr. Savre, jokes are sometimes inappropriate and can lead to misunderstandings.
Joke. You do not frighten a person as a joke. The person is not accustomed to our culture and our practices. The person is a visitor here, and if anything is done that frightens the person, for them it is a negative experience which they will report back when they get on board ship. But we have got to ensure that when a person comes here as a visitor, that he has a totally enjoyable stay with us, whether it is for 6 hours or for 6 days. And that is something that cannot be overemphasized, and that is a message that we want to bring home to everybody in Dominica.
The Media Workers Association of Dominica, MWAD, is concerned about the tension which exists between the St. Lucia Media Workers Association and the John Compton government. According to a statement released by MWAD, the Compton government has accused St. Lucia's media workers of being the most vicious in the entire English-speaking Caribbean. MWAD calls this criticism an unfair generalization and states that it is unfortunate and regrettable that the situation has come this far. MWAD stresses that politicians and media workers should strive to maintain a stable relationship and would like Prime Minister John Compton to dialogue with the St. Lucia Media Workers Association. Stay with us. We have regional news after this.
The concentrated power of New Breeze Ultra is now yours to discover.
New Breeze in such a little red box? How neat.
By so when we went out, we saw the place in a blaze. So we started water brigade, and we started throwing water. When we watched, we saw the whole place in a mess.
I saw a blaze on top of my kitchen. I feel like the heat coming through. So I just picked up the first one. I dashed it out the back door, and after I took the other one, I wrapped him up in the blanket because we have empty. And I dashed him. We dashed outside. We jumped in and dashed outside.
So first thing I think of is to get rid of the 2 cylinders that we have, the 2 gas cylinders. I switch fire. So I make it up and I just make it off.
Police have in their custody Stanley Felix, also known as Pasa Swim, who is alleged to have started the fire. His neighbor,
but Nicole Potav got no bomb machine say cooking national university. Nicole Potav no thing, and he always used to be trouble in nice reporting to the police. And what he used to say, he used to tell people he'll burn my house, and he tell me he'll burn my house and he'll rape me, but he didn't have time because every night I used to be getting up every minute. Until about 6 o'clock and I would take a good sleep. No, last night he really burned my house, so true.
The fire has left the alleged arsonist as well as 3 other families homeless.
I don't know what I'm going to do because of my children and them school. I owe my children and them school things. I buy not even for my clothes I can get for myself to put on me. Not even my children clothes I can get everything in the house, my room, everything.
And we can't sleep in the house again because it's kind of it's bad day off now, so we're hoping that we can do something for us and get something for us.
So far, the Housing Division has stocked up land on which to build, but has offered no immediate shelter. Squatters on the Yampi's cottage land may soon have permanent residences. According to Minister for Housing Alan Carbon, a 5-acre site at Yampi's has been identified for the resettlement of these persons and others facing serious housing problems. Mr. Carbon says the site is essentially unserviced. However, design work is in progress to put in place a water intake system, electricity, and other basic facilities. Dominica's environment needs protection both above and below sea level. Skin Diver magazine's marketing representative, Mark Melrose, came to Dominica for DWA's Dive Fest, which took place last weekend. He believes that with more people diving, the environment must be protected.
Obviously, the government and the people have seen that the beauty of the topside needed to be protected, so they installed a national park system. Underwater is the exact same. The coral reefs, the sponges, the marine life is very delicate and fragile, and everything underwater is alive. So when you get the divers and the boats in that area, the need for protection is the utmost. And that's the Water Sports Association is taking steps to do that right now.
Billy Lawrence, secretary to the Dominica Water Sports Association, explained just what those steps are.
We're going to be doing a couple of cleanup programs. I guess it seems like if nobody else takes a stand and start cleaning up the garbage, then it will just stay there. So, you know, we're going to be asking for help. We're going to be asking businesses, organizations, and individuals to help clean up, and that's one of our main goals.
Minister for Education and Sports Rupert Sorrento says his ministry remains committed to the construction of a new school on a site at Geneva to serve the communities along the southeastern part of Dominica. At yesterday's House of Assembly meeting, Mr. Sorrento said that funds from the United Kingdom government will assist with the project. But in the meantime, the Ministry of Education has been working towards relieving some of the overcrowding at the Grand Bay schools. Mr. Sorrento says the ministry will continue making use of the Grand Bay Community Center, and as soon as the necessary community support is mobilized, construction of one additional and possibly 2 prefabricated buildings will begin. Building materials have already been purchased. Stay with us, we have more news after this.
Okay, she's got a Frenchie special dog. It's nice.
Schools have decided not to allow the children to attend classes there. Today, concerned parents met with the Honorable Rupert Sorrento, Minister for Education and Sports, to see what could be done. Vice President of the Parent-Teacher Association, Augustus LeBron, was reluctant to speak about the matter to the press and advised other members not to do so. It seems that the Honorable Rupert Sorrento will be playing a conciliatory role between the Scouts and the PTA. Brother Michael, principal of the St. Mary's Primary, says that 2 buildings which were suggested by the school in January as an ideal spot for JSP students are now being considered. It is alleged that fire hydrants were not in working order during last week's fire in the Pound area. The fire left 4 houses almost completely destroyed and 3 families homeless. Chief Fire Officer Clement Burton wants to straighten the record.
Well, as far as the report that I've had, it's not a question of the hydrants were not working. The hydrant, or the closest hydrant to the fire of that evening, the water pressure there was very low, and so there was inadequate pressure for firefighting. The fire of that said night in the Pound area, we do what we term a relay. We have a pump into the Rosa River, and we run water through the hoses onto the fire scene. That was also done, but it was found that it wasn't necessary by that time that the water had arrived. There was sufficient water from the hydrant.
The fire service is responsible for inspecting hydrants, and according to Clement Burton, this is done regularly. The real problem has little to do with inspection.
We note hydrants that are defective, and those are reported to the DOWASCO, which is the agency responsible for the maintenance and the setting up of hydrants. The question is the water supply, the water pressure. As you may know that within Rosa itself, you do not have, there is a need for putting in new mains. There's still, the mains that are within the city is still very old. And the quantity of water there, can be very low. Especially during the daytime, what we term peak demand, when the public is using a lot of water, you can find very low pressures within the lines.
Meanwhile, Derek Birmingham, a victim of the Pound fire, tells us what he and his family has been through.
Around and around looking for assistance in whatever way that the public and the different business administration could offer, including the government. And we have got quite a few positive response. Example from the Red Cross, they have donated a few clothing and sheets there, and they promised to give us 2 mattresses.
The Housing Division will allocate a piece of land to Mr. Birmingham, but not immediately.
The government told us in about 6 or 7 weeks' time, which I think that is 2 months and something.
In the meantime, Deputy Leader of the UWP, Norris Prevost, has promised his help, and on Saturday, Prime Minister Dame Eugenia Charles donated some building materials so that the family can have temporary shelter. But the fire has caused other problems.
I went to the social welfare system to help me with the kids' uniforms and books, because we lost a lot in the fire. Well, today I just came up from there in the ministry, and they told me that they can only assist me with the uniforms, and they cannot assist me with the books. So
Mr. Birmingham hopes to persuade the Social Welfare Division to help his son by supplying his books instead of 2 uniforms. Minister for Tourism, the Honorable Charles Maynard, says that while we're heavily advertising Dominica as an ecotourism destination, we must be careful not to place undue demands on our environment.
We visit our few sites. So what are we going to do about this is the question. Well, we have applied, and I think that has been announced recently to the Caribbean Development Bank for major projects, some $8 million, which will enable us to open up something like 6 new sites and provide facilities in those sites. So to the extent that we have more sites, we can control the numbers. And also, of course, we are going to introduce user fees. So we can determine on a certain day, in a certain week, only certain numbers will go to that particular site.
Mr. Maynard stresses that those who would like to see Dominica remain as it is must realize that we will eventually face environmental degradation. Therefore, we must have resources to deal with the situation. In related news, Dominica's 3 top taxi drivers will be announced this evening at the American Express Taxi Drivers Awards ceremony. Minister for Tourism, the Honorable Charles Maynard, says this is an important initiative in validating the tourism industry.
A very important emphasis has been training of taxi drivers, because it is felt that your taxi drivers are one of your first point of contacts and an important point of contact with the visitor. So the impressions that they create on the visitor, the way that they serve the visitor, depends on whether you will get repeat business.
Mr. Menard says repeat business is vital in